today we in Brighton, which I'm really happy about because I've been away for a bit. And same as Anthony, he's also been regular visitor to Brighton in the past, and we'll come back to that. But actually, it was a guy I interviewed here, Nick from Seed, some years ago now, I think it is. And he made the intro to Anthony and said, you should be talking because he has something that your audience really would benefit from. And then set up a conversation with Anthony. It was meant to just to be like this 20 minutes quick catch up. I think we spent about 45 minutes, and you could quickly see there was a really joined understanding of about how you actually build a hospitality business from the inside out, but also you need to look at not just the people, because it's not the people that's the problem, it's often the process they're working with or the resources they don't have to do a job well. So lean thinking, service profit chain was really what we talked about. So that's actually what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about that actually it's not always people as your biggest problem. It's actually the process and actually, the resource they work with or how they actually think about how to run the business. That's actually sometimes is the biggest constraint to moving forward. Welcome to the show, Anthony, and welcome to Brighton.
Delighted to be back, Michael.
So just to give a bit of context, it'd be very good because it's very interesting because you run a hospitality business before you went into advising businesses around the lean methodology, which we'll dive into what is in a moment. So please share your story and what made you actually start talking about how you can actually improve your business through Work Better Studio.
Okay. Well, my background actually is graphic design. Had hoped to study fine art, but it wasn't good enough. Ended up studying design and worked in that industry for about 10 years, setting up my own design consultancy with a small team. Loved that. Loved the variety, bringing my skills and my team's expertise to different industries every day. And in late 1999, the whole internet thing was beginning to kick off, and made a decision rather than be an advisor to companies who were broadening their business online, maybe set up an online business. Chose travel because that was the family business. My dad had a tour operating business. Chose ski because back in 2000, not everybody had credit cards, not everybody had internet access, but skiers more than others did. And out of that, founded a company called directski.com. That started a now 25-year journey through venture capital investment. We're an Irish company. We broke into the British market. We were the first to do that. We've done some acquisitions along the way, including a company called Skibeat, based out of Brighton, which is what got me into actual hospitality as opposed to just selling other people's hotels. And about 10 years ago, merged that entire business back into my father's tour operating business, which is Topflight Travel Group. And that's kind of where we got to by last year. I was group CEO of Topflight Travel Group, family-owned business, looking after everything from hospitality, operations, finance, technology, software development, very, very broad. And I made a decision. Love that business. It was very, very successful. We'd come through COVID and Brexit, but I was applying a very broad range of skills to one business. And I'd always wanted to go back to helping lots of businesses and being really focused. And as we'll talk, my real passion in terms of the business was lean and productivity and process improvement and quality. So I made a decision last summer to wrap up with the family business and set out on my own. Again, a business that I own 100% of, but bring those skills to a broad range of industries, including hospitality and travel, but also other industries as well. And that's where we are today. I founded Work Better Studio to do that.
And what is the kind of value Work Better Studio adds to its clients, and what kind of work do you do, and where did actually that idea, grow from?
I think and we'll call it the lean approach, but we'll talk about what that means, offers somewhat of an unfair advantage. If you get it, if you understand it, well then work gets easier. It's your business will be more successful, your people will be happier, your customers will be happier. And my experience is that lots and lots of companies just don't know it exists. In manufacturing, for sure. If you work in the automotive industry, you cannot be in business if you're not doing this. But in services businesses and in hospitality, I see less and less of it. And for me, if this is how I spend my time till retirement and beyond, is helping businesses understand this, and it's not hugely expensive, and if they can get a gain from it, well then I think I'm doing good work.
Yeah. And just to touch a bit on, if we talk about you were hit by the pandemic in your family business, the skiing business, what do you actually do at that point? Because that's really, from our first conversation, I could see that was where you really started practicing the lean methodology really intensely to get out of COVID and the pandemic and all the challenges that will throw in a business that's not just in one location, it's in multiple locations on different, playing fields with different laws, compliance, issue in itself when something like COVID hit.
Well, actually, I think the first big hit for our business, I mean, like every hospitality and tourism business, we worked through 9/11, foot and mouth disease, financial crisis, but the financial crisis in 2009, 2010, that really impacted our business. So as a tour operator, we're highly regulated. We're answerable to the Civil Aviation Authority in the UK and their Irish equivalents. And we began to come under pressure, as did all tour operators around 2009, 2010 on strength of balance sheet. So up to that stage, we'd been venture capital backed. It was about scale, and profitability maybe took a back seat to that. What we had to do in 2010 was we needed to strengthen the balance sheet. Really focus on profitability and putting that back into the business. And there's an organisation, Irish government organisation called Enterprise Ireland, who've been fabulous to our business, but also any export business operating out of Ireland. And they held a breakfast briefing on this thing called lean. And a guy, Richard Keegan, who's now a dear friend of mine, stood up and said, how would you like to, improve the quality of your offering to your customers, improve your staff satisfaction, and improve your bottom line all at the same time? I went, yeah, that's us. And we started to get into it. We were a small company at the time, relatively. We had about 20 permanent staff, maybe about 40 people working in resort. And with Enterprise Ireland support, we done about 400 days of training on lean. A lot of it was frustrating. It was looking at manufacturing, looking at automotive and going, okay, well, how can we translate this into travel and hospitality and service? And we worked through that. And that really strengthened the business. So from that day, from 2010, it was like, guys, this is serious. If we're going to scale this business, we have to do it thoughtfully. We have to do it thinking about profit and understand that the profit will come from quality. If you focus on quality, the results will follow. When COVID hit, we were at an interesting point. The business had scaled. We'd merged it with my father's business. I think maybe we'd lost a little bit of that edge in terms of productivity and process. And we had brought Toyota in to look at the business. So this was in the autumn, just before COVID. I was concerned that the message and the skills wasn't reaching frontline. So we'd done something which I don't think any other hospitality had done, is we got Toyota to train all staff. So we had about 60, 70 permanent staff at the time across France, UK, Ireland. And we had Toyota train them all directly in practical problem solving. So that's their approach to how do you deal with challenges for the business. And that had finished up in November, December 2019. So when COVID hit and there were challenges on the business, our approach was, guys, we've just trained for this. We are now faced with, a challenge like we've never seen before, but literally everybody in this organization has only just been trained on how to deal with challenges and problems. So we need to figure this out.
And we're going to come back to the practical problems, because I thought that was really, really interesting, because I think lots of hospitality businesses That's what they do. They put out fires, I call it. But we'll come back to that. What if we had to define what lean means? Because I think a lot of people think, oh yeah, lean, that's something with Toyota. It's something you said as well.
Mhm.
It only applies in manufacturing. Yeah, I'm running a factory, then I can look at lean and I can really optimize. And I have myself a background from McDonald's, and that's really in principle. They don't talk about lean, but in principle, you see how they work and how they approach operation is lean principles.
Yeah.
Closing the gap all the time, finding the biggest problem in your organization, focusing on it, solve it, break it down, putting into some kind of process that makes the business better over time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it from the outside and look at organizations maybe like ours or like McDonald's, you think that what people are going after is just removing waste, making things more efficient, but it's about quality.
Yeah.
So how this whole thing started was, after World War II, the Japanese industry was totally devastated. US wasn't. US was heading into boom times, and the Japanese really founded, actually US principles based on US principles, started to focus on quality and said, if we're going to rebuild our nation, it has to be, quality first. And it turns out if you keep going after quality and keep going after what are the activities that we're doing that are detracting from whether it's the quality of a hi-fi unit or a car or an experience in a hotel, that will lead to efficiency.
Yeah.
And that efficiency will lead to profitability. So if we look at an organization like Toyota, who are the masters on this, they are not heading out to be, I don't believe, the most efficient or most profitable. They're heading out to have the highest quality. Now, it just so happens that by focusing on that, compared to their biggest competitor, Volkswagen Group, they manufacture about the same amount of cars, but they do it with half as many people and they make twice as much money. But the focus is always on quality.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. I read a story after I talked with you, totally randomly. I came across that. I can't remember, was it a book? But it doesn't matter. It was about Toyota's founder, and he was walking around in the manufacturing facilities Toyota had. And this is way back in time. This is probably in the 70s. And there were some people that were very fast, and they thought they were the best. And then there were some people that was very slow, but they didn't have any quality issues. But they put the premium product through. So he actually asked everybody to learn from them. And then he fired the people that didn't go and learn from them. He fired them.
Yeah.
Because they were doing the right thing. They were building the Toyota quality product and improving the process slowly, and speed would come then. And he was very focusing on those people that was doing the right thing instead of the people that were very fast, could build cars and put them together or whatever their part of the process was. He got rid of them. In principle, focused on rewarding the one that focused on quality.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And I thought that was such an interesting conversation from what you shared on our call as well. So how do you actually then take this, you said like translating, the learnings from companies like Toyota manufacturing into a hospitality business? What did you do in that process?
Well, for start, we started to visit factories. I think in the early days, it required some deep thinking. It wasn't obvious how things compared, and especially in our business, we were mostly tour operating, less so hospitality. So concepts like holding stock, was a little bit abstract. But I suppose we started to trust the approach. So we said, okay, well, look, we can't quite see at the outset how this directly applies to our business. But if we follow the principles, and the principles, the practical problem solving is, okay, well, what's happening in the organization today, or one part of it? How should that be? What outcome are you expecting? And many times people, well, I'm not really sure. Okay, so that's a gap. Let's set some standard. Let's see if there's a gap. Let's understand what's causing that gap. Let's pause for a moment and really deep dive. Are we sure this is the root cause of what's causing it? So with these things, well, the problem is the staff aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, well, why are they not doing what they're supposed to do? Well, that's because we only just trained them, yesterday, because we've high staff turnover. Well, why have we high staff turnover? And if we dive down and you get to the root cause of what's happening, and think, okay, let's fix that. Okay, let's put a fix in, and let's monitor and see if that fix delivers the expected result. And rinse and repeat. Let's move on to the next thing. It's and it turns out if you take that methodical process, it actually doesn't matter if we look at how do we prepare breakfast in the morning for our guests, or do room changeover, or develop a piece of software. The same principles deliver results at the end.
What was the biggest gap you found, and what did it mean for the business that you solved that?
There's been lots. Some high value in terms of money. I think the one that's most significant to us, and it's funny because we knew the right thing to do, but we weren't doing it. Was we were looking at our operation in France. So Ski Beat's operation has about 40, 50 ski chalets. So each ski chalet, maybe one or two chalet hosts working there, and the job is you prepare breakfast, clean the bedrooms, go out skiing for half the day, and then come back and prepare evening meal and host the guests. So that's the service. We were under pressure in terms of cost because pre-Brexit, the staff were on quite low wages. It really was a strip end plus bed and board. And by the time we're post-COVID, we're now past Brexit. So everybody has to be brought down on proper work visas, French working regulations, 35-hour working week, overtime, all of that kind of thing. So there's commercial pressures. I think those commercial pressures caused most chalet companies, most British chalet companies to just exit the market. They couldn't deal with the cost. But we were also on a drive to improve the guest experience. So we measure Net Promoter Score. With Ski Beat, we got that up to a solid high 50s, which was pretty good. Probably best in class versus our competitors, but we wanted to get it even higher. So we had two things happening at the same time. One was looking at the workload, and then separate to that, looking at the quality. And it turns out that both of them were the same thing in our case, which was small maintenance issues. So this is hot water not working, the oven isn't getting up to temperature because the hinges are a little bit loose. This is the cabinet in the bathroom is coming off its hinges. It's tiny things, little leaks, that kind of thing. And it turns out that when we looked at the customer surveys and the score that they were giving us for Net Promoter Score, so would you recommend to a family or friend, there was a high correlation with the answer on that to whether they'd experienced any small maintenance issues while they were in the chalet. When we talked to the staff as to where they were spending their time, we measured. So we started to measure all staff activity to the minute. So they had a little app on their phone, and actually the culture was such that people were happy to do that. It turns out that the staff were spending lots of their time dealing with these maintenance issues. In fact, it turns out that the management layer above the chalet hosts were spending a large proportion of their time dealing with these issues. So we set about saying, okay, well, in order to improve customer service and also to improve the costs and the amount of time we're spending on things, we need to improve how we deal with maintenance issues. And actually, it was Toyota. We brought them down to France and we're looking at our operation, and they asked a really dumb question, which is, instead of focusing on your response to maintenance issues, why don't you just stop them happening in the first place? And go, okay, yeah, that's a good question. So we introduced a preventative maintenance program. Instead of waiting for the hinges on the oven to get loose, replace them once a year.
Yeah.
If you're going to replace, light bulbs, replace all the light bulbs and do that before first guests arrive. If the hinges on the doors get loose, allow them to get loose once and then replace them. Toilet seats was a big thing, coming loose and falling off. And they go, well, toilet seats don't fall off. They get a little bit loose, a little bit looser, a little bit looser, and then they fall off. So make it part of the weekly toilet schedule. So you clean, down the shower, but also check, is toilet seat solid? And if not, swap it out.
Yeah.
So those kind of things. And when we looked at the work that was taking, introduced a preventative maintenance program, changed the recruitment on the chalet host. So these are seasonal roles, which is quite good because you get to tailor what you need each year, and also you can flex the headcount without making anybody redundant. We said we need people who are comfortable doing basic things like changing a plug, clearing a U-bend, those sort of. And we said, if this works, this should eliminate a lot of the work for the chalet hosts. So we're going to staff on the basis that it will work.
Mm-hmm.
And it will eliminate pretty much the need for the line manager in resort. So we removed the line manager layer completely. So our structure there was maybe 40, 50 chalet hosts, 7 or 8 resort managers answering into 2 area managers. We beefed up the area managers from 2 to 3, and we removed the whole next layer of management.
Wow.
And we did that in 1 year. And that done 2 things. One, it worked, which was good. So the staff had more autonomy to get on and look after the customers. Maintenance had to shift from repairing to preventative maintenance, because if they didn't, they were going to let down the staff in resort. So they took their role very seriously. But also removing that layer, rather than waiting to see that it work and then see could remove that layer, it kind of forced, it had to happen. Putting that bit of tension on the business meant that actually we have to make this work, because if we don't make it work, it's going to be trouble for week 1 when the guests arrive.
Yeah. So in principle, that was such a huge impact on the P&L that actually it made you competitive and you could stay in the market where other was exiting.
Coming out of, especially through Brexit, I think it was survival rather than competitiveness. But but since then, it's made Ski Beat a very successful business, commercially successful in a world where most smaller chalet companies completely exited the market, and most of the larger tour operators exited the chalet market because they couldn't see how it worked commercially. There's still a few in there, and the people who are there are very good at what they do.
And it's quite interesting. You talked before about practical problem solving, and that's really sometimes leaders in hospitality business spend a lot of time on practical problem solving, which it's part of their job. You want them to do that. But often it's because you haven't asked the questions you just walk through. How, what, when, why, who should be doing it? Is it actually the right way we're doing it now? We often solve we have a problem, we jump down to solution, because we're just going to continue to do what we always have done. If we run a hotel or a ski resort or whatever, we're just going to repair the problem instead of find out how do they actually come up in the beginning from the start. And I think that's really where you see a lot of managers spend a lot of time on where they burn out, is they have to solve all these practical problems and then they have to lead the business and make it profitable. But they run around and do all these practical, and then you put the mid-management layer in, then you have more people to manage, and people get disengaged the more layers you have.
100%.
The bigger the disengagement is, because there's too many bosses around, and there's just what story is the right story that comes up to the top. So you lose, in a way, touch with the front line if you want or not, which is quite interesting. And Jack Stack, that was on the show, we talked a bit about him this morning. In January, talked about in his business as a manufacturing business that actually by giving the autonomy out to the front line of the manufacturing floor, we could avoid having all these mid-managers in the production as well, was actually creating an opportunity for less mistakes, more honest communication. We could actually solve the problems the business has to solve, and a better relationship with the leadership.
Yeah. Well, so I'd said that one of the things with that change, that was a transformational change for Ski Beat. But as I said, we'd seen it before. So when I go back to, I think 2007, 2008, we'd done the same thing in directski.com. One of our overseas manager looked at the operation that we had. Again, all seasonal staff, so there's opportunities to change things. And she said, if I look at where my workload is, it's mostly problems coming up from the country managers. If I look at their workload, it's mostly problems coming from the area managers, and their workload is mostly problems coming up from, at the time we called them reps in resort. And she said, but we don't know anything more than the guys in resort know. The people who are closest to the problem are the people best capable of fixing it.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, why don't we just train them to deal with the issue locally, and give them autonomy? So I haven't heard this. I hear about hospitality companies giving autonomy to staff, but that was 2007. We gave all resort staff full autonomy to spend any amount of the company's money in any way they see fit without asking for permission. Now, most of the times, that's buying a bottle of Prosecco or skidooing for the family. Sometimes it's bigger. Sometimes it's anticipating that there's going to be, they hear about an avalanche, they realise the roads are going to be closed between the airport back to the resort, and going in and booking 100 hotel rooms, but not asking. If you stop and have to wait to go up the chain of command to ask about that, the moment is lost.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for nearly 20 years. And as you imagine, the staff love it. High autonomy. They love working. Although they're seasonal roles, most of the staff come back year after year. The guests are happy because the problems get dealt with immediately. And for the company, well, it meant that we didn't have to have that middle management layer supporting those people, but also the amount of money that was spent each year on compensation reduced. It turns out doing something small in resort is a hell of a lot cheaper than waiting until the customer comes home and writes a letter of complaint.
Yeah, and you already dealt with the problem up front.
Yeah.
And in principle, they're happy because actually they feel they've been hurt. Yeah, because it's being heard and being compensated.
Yeah, so the job changes. And so I think with the autonomy came responsibility, as it is for those chalet hosts, which is, okay, we're going to give you autonomy and we'll pay you well to do the job. But you need to send the customers home happy. And there's a measurement on that. So every customer, they're on an app. They're either red, we know there's an issue, green, we know they're happy, or amber, we're not sure.
Yeah.
And the job of the frontline staff is you need to know that the customer is coming home happy. And that turns into almost zero post-travel complaints. Everything gets dealt with in resort. If somebody's with you for a week, don't let it fester for the whole week. If there's an issue on Monday, deal with it on Monday.
Yeah.
And then they can enjoy the rest of their trip.
And how did you keep that kind of autonomy alive? And how, because most company leaders would think, first of all, I'd be very scared of doing that because they would be spending money they shouldn't be spending. And I guess that happens. But as you said, in the long run, it's better than giving compensation and losing customers for good and never come back. But then how do I keep this alive? How do I actually keep a culture like that alive, especially in a seasonal business like yours where people come in and out? Does people just grasp that they're allowed to do that? Because in most companies, they're told, if there's an issue, go and talk with your line manager. It
starts with recruitment. So we needed people who had the desire to work with autonomy and also the capability. So, I'm thinking for the last 20 years as we've recruited, whether it's for senior role, chief financial officer, or frontline in resort, everybody's been asked questions like, tell us about a time when there was a system or process that you felt could have been improved. What did you do about it? And really drill into that. Did they really, make a significant change wherever they worked? And that could have been as a student in college, working on a college, drama society, or it could have been in a role that they were in work. So that helps get those people in, train them well, and that means having, whatever the key processes are in the business, are they well thought out, well documented, simply. So we turned all training material into what's called 1-point lessons. So a single A4 page that describes how to do a single task, clearly, visually, with a standard set to it. And then take away the resources. So, if we find a way of using less space to store laundry, get rid of the spare space. Don't leave it there. If you find a way of operating with fewer managers, get rid of the managers. Don't have them there. From I think the role of the leaders, especially at the very senior level, is to keep the entire organization under a controlled tension. So we know the limit. People are working kind of at the limit of what's possible, but comfortably. So not, so you can comfortably do this job in this time, but we're not going to give extra hours or extra ingredients and stock or extra marketing budget, know where that line is, and so that there's always a push to make an improvement. And when you make an improvement, it's going to be noticeable.
How do you keep that? Because I think Danny Meyer, the great hospitality guy, talks about gentle, constant pressure as well in his organization. How do you do that without losing people? Because I guess that's a really fine balance there of how you get to that.
Yeah, that's the role of leadership. So to do that, you need to understand what's going on. You know, and I bet, you know, let's take hospitality. So everybody's focused on the guest experience and delivering fantastic meals, but let's take it away from the front line and go into the finance department or procurement. You know, does the person who heads up that, do they know what the people who report into them do? Like really know? You know, well, he's in charge of accounts payable. Okay, but what does his day look like? What does the work look like? And in most cases, it's invisible. They don't know. And if you don't know what people are doing, well, then you can't do what you've just described. Keep it, you know, a little bit of pressure on it. All you can do is react to if they say they're busy, but then they must be busy. So I think the responsibility is on leaderships and the management to understand the work, understand what's happening in the organization, and protect the employees. So make sure that they're not overburdened. And that overburdening could be, you know, putting too much on one individual, or maybe putting too much on one individual at certain times of the week or the day. So understand that, and make sure, but at the same time, make sure that they're, you know, that if problems are in the business, that they will get surfaced. So what I mean by that is, if we've got a problem with a supplier, and they often deliver the wrong product, or they often deliver late, if we're holding 2 weeks worth of supply, you'll never see that.
No.
Now, if we hold a day's worth of supply, you're going to spot that pretty quick. And then that problem gets surfaced and you can address it.
I think it's very interested in, because often the higher you get in organization, you say, well, my job is strategy, but how can you actually build the right strategy if you don't understand how the problem arises? And actually, if the employee that is responsible for that area, often you make it a people problem and say that person is not delivering, is not performing. And that could be the case. But actually, the first question you have to ask yourself, I guess, is also what you're saying is there anything in that area, in their work processes, that's not working, but they might not want to say it because it makes them look like they're not good at their job, or they don't know. Can't just see it. They always done it like that. It's like they made it so complicated working in that job. You actually need to take this big roll of clutter together, different kind of strings, and start untying it, spaghetti ball in principle, and help them to get it untied. And actually, that's your job. And often people think it's like making these big strategic decisions. Yes, it is, but you can't make them, in my view, before in the hospitality business. You're really down in the details. And I can remember I had a franchisee, my first franchisee in McDonald's, and he came in the restaurants every day. He didn't mean he was sometimes on the till, he was sometimes in the drive-thru, but he really walked around in the restaurant, counting things, looking at things. And at some point I asked him when I became manager, why are you coming every Sunday and counting things in the stock? Because I know how well you run the business compared to how much stock you have. Yeah. If you're on top of it. If you have for 2 weeks, it's just funny you said that, 2 weeks of hamburger paper, I know you are losing the overview. So therefore, you're buying too much. You're putting too much of my cash into the stock. Yeah. I know we're going to use it, but that's not the case. It just makes us not on top of the process. There's something wrong in the process. So we need to start looking at that. Yeah,
100%. Get in there and walk the floor. And that's easier, I think, maybe in some aspects of hospitality. So if we're operating a restaurant, you can come in and observe. Yeah. You can look at what's happening in the kitchen. The chalet host experience I mentioned is far more difficult. That's quite an intimate setting between the chalet hosts and the guests. So by its nature, it's unsupervised work. Yeah. You have to trust that they'll deliver on the service. And then when we get into the more knowledge or data work, finance and marketing and operations, most of this is living in spreadsheets or systems. Yeah. So it's quite hidden. I'd actually be thinking about it as a hidden factory and go, look, it's there. There is data moving around and work happening. I just can't see it because everybody's at their quad of desks or working from home. Then the challenge is, okay, how do I expose that?
Yeah.
So I can see that in the same way as walking into the stock room and, so yeah, I can see that there's shelves full of, hamburger paper and in fact a few boxes on the floor.
Yeah.
But can I also see all of the half-developed code in my technology department or the unpaid invoices in the finance function? That's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. So if I on Monday morning have listened to this episode and I'm thinking I want to do this, but I'm running a hotel, I'm running a restaurant. I'm maybe a GM, maybe I'm the head chef. I want to do this because I need to close this gap, especially in the times we're in right now, but especially in the UK where I met a couple of operators where, there's new pressures coming in with new minimum wage coming into play, new compliance and so on. So it just makes it even harder to run a business. In principle, what you told about happened in your business in the Alps. How do I get started and how do I accept that this is a process where it's not just emotional and unpredictable, everything in hospitality, but I'm actually in control of more than I think. But often you would meet these people who are chef or GMs thinking, well, that it can't be done in my business. It's not a production business.
Yeah. So the first thing that's going to need to be in place for this approach to work is humility. So an openness to maybe there's a better way and maybe I don't have all the answers. On Monday morning, probably the quickest way to achieve that and get some quick wins is take some part of the business that's causing frustration. There's always a queue to check in or the breakfast buffet. People aren't happy, with the customer service scores. Go down. So leave the spreadsheets and the ERPs and behind, walk down and just observe. Spend an hour watching very closely what's happening. Where are the problems occurring? What seems to be causing difficulty for the staff? Talk to the people on the front line. And then think of all the things you've seen in the last hour. What activities were delivering customer value? The things that get you the 9s and 10s on your net promoter score.
Yeah.
And what was the other stuff? And then take some of that other stuff and take it out of the process.
Yeah.
And you're going to see it. If you've been doing lean in hospitality for the last 2 decades and you walk down and see a process, you're still going to see stuff. You'll see stuff that you didn't see last time around.
Yeah.
Or you'll see things that you fixed last time around and have begun to creep back in again. So you got to keep on top of this. And it can be just an hour. After an hour, you're going to see something that you can fix and you're going to realize that you don't really know everything that's going on in every part of the business. So that's a little bit of a humility pill.
Yeah.
And take it from there.
And I guess that's where many, more senior people often lose the grip with it. They still understand the numbers looks good, but if it really went out in the front line, they will discover there's so many issues that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
And that's actually the job.
And it's across the business. So especially as a business scales, we might be very efficient in the kitchen, in front of house, but the rest of the business has scaled up. The marketing team, the finance function has scaled. Do the same thing. If I ask, and we've done this, gone through this process, you ask a financial controller, how does the team do accounts payable? How do they pay invoices? Oh, I'll tell you how it works. Okay, now sit over the shoulder of one of those people and watch what they do for half an hour. Now drag your chair around to the other person who does the same job and see what they're doing, and I guarantee it's going to be something different.
Yeah, so there's some waste there.
And you go, okay, well, these two people are doing the same job, they're doing it differently. One of them, or both of them might have good ideas. What if we take out half an hour, put that up on the whiteboard and consolidate on what the best process is? This is an hour, 2 hours worth of work. And you get a better process at the far end of it. Well, you think you have a better process. So you talked earlier, Michael, about managers running around fixing things. So one of the real key principles in terms of a lean approach is, yes, think about what improvements need to be made or can be made and then install an improvement. But they'll call it planning and doing.
Yeah.
But then there's also study and act. And then, so those next two steps are, okay, we introduced a change. We thought that this would make a difference to how we do finance, how we do procurement, how we run the kitchen, but did it make a difference? So let's observe. Let's come back a week later. Let's measure progress. And if it has produced the result that we want, okay, now we can begin to think about locking that in as standard process. We can see, is there any learnings from that we could apply to other parts of the business? And if it didn't work, don't go backwards. Go, okay, let's understand why it didn't work and what we might want to do differently. So sometimes you'll get an improvement, say, okay, this is good. We have fixed something, but that's caused another issue.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, the fix that you had is good. Let's hold on to that, but let's go and look at that other issue and see what we would do to address that. So it's that cycle of plan, do, study, act, plan, do, study, act, where, and I fall into it, and most leaders do, you get into a plan, do, because there's always something that needs your time, and you're not coming back to see, are you getting the results that you thought you would get from the change?
And I guess it comes down to, as you said about before, like, how do you get everybody trained in this problem-solving methodology? That's really the key thing. So it's like everybody is doing it, or else you don't going to get the flywheel effect of this.
Yes.
Because if it's just the leadership team coming down, looking at a problem, fixing them, handing over a process, you're not really going to get the impact you need fast enough, I guess.
Yeah. So there's not a huge amount of training involved to get things moving. So most people, especially when they come into a job new, will see things that aren't right. Now, if they've got a line manager or colleagues who go, oh, don't worry about that, it's been like that forever. Well, then, within a week or two, they're going to settle back into that. Whereas if the line managers take away that fear to go, no, it's okay to speak up. If you see something that's not right, that's not deliberate.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear about it. And you're not going to get in trouble, or you're not going to look stupid, because our leadership is displaying humility. They're open to, looking at what they've done. Well, then you just need to capture it, but with focus. So a lot of companies say, well, yes, we do that. We've got suggestion boxes, and we've got hundreds of ideas coming from the front line, and go, okay, but do the front line understand what the business is trying to achieve? Do they understand where your challenges are? Do they understand where we're struggling to make margin? Do they understand what's the biggest issues affecting our net promoter score? And if they don't, well, then that's that communication. It's, okay, let's make sure that everybody in the organization understands what we're trying to do. Are we being successful at it or not, from a commercial point of view or from a customer service point of view? And then ask them to look at what they're doing through that lens. What are you seeing around here that's causing us not to meet those targets? And what can we do to improve it? So as a lean consultant, if I come into an organization, the simple version is get to the front line, ask those frontline people what's wrong, and then do what they said, and you're going to get most of the way.
And what is where you see, when you go in and work with service/hospitality businesses, where do you see most waste? Like, where is typical a very good area, besides, go and talk with frontline, but where does it actually, it comes up in most service businesses because of the nature of them?
I think it maybe there's something big within the organization, something big and obvious, but mostly I don't think it's that. It's small things. It's the little niggles that don't get dealt with, that come up day after day, shift after shift, and have to be dealt with. And whether that's a quality issue that needs to be dealt with, or a supplier who, those guys are great, but they always send the wrong amount of whatever, or the laundry people always send the stuff back in the wrong way, or tiny little things that we get used to living with. Yeah. And we put up with. I can't go off and do this action without getting sign off from a manager. Why? Because somebody 4 years ago cocked up, and and now we always insist that everybody gets authority to do that. It's all these tiny little things, but they're the things we'll see. So if Monday morning you go down and start to really look, they're the things you'll see, and and I think most leaders will kind of look at the organization through sort of half-closed hands and go, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing here. How did this happen? You know, so it's not big. It's tiny things, and if we get that culture right to go, no, let's fix those tiny things, but with focus. You know, we're not. This is not random improvements. It's improvements towards a goal that we understand, and we understand what our customers expect from us. Well, then, yeah, I think that's. It's super easy, but it's really difficult.
And how do you, like, if you're like the founder, how do you get this process started? You really bought into this. How do you get this started? How do you actually get people to understand this? Because the problems that occur every day in the operation, people just, that's how it is. That's how it works here. And we just fix it. We tape it again. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're the founder, I think then we've half the battle won. So it's going to be more difficult if you're working within an organization and the senior leadership are not taking this seriously. I'd say it's near impossible to make significant change. But if you're the founder or the senior team and you want to make this change, it starts with yes, learn the principles, and there is a skill and techniques to these. To this approach, but it's get in, understand what's happening, and if you don't know, if you say, well, look, we're not really clear on what it is that the customer really wants, okay, well, start there then. Let's start with understanding that, and for the staff, make sure and be genuine on this, that what you're setting out to do is improve the quality of the offering to the customer or to the guest. What you're looking to do is make the job easier for the staff. You're not trying to make them work faster or longer. What we're not about here is job cuts. We're not going to go in and work with the team and go, fantastic, thanks for your support. Now we're going to let half you go. That won't work. But what we can do is say, well, actually, we can guarantee that this approach is not going to lead to job cuts. And if by looking at these processes, we find that there's spare capacity within the team, well, then how can we apply that capacity to improving the guest experience or customer experience? How can we scale the business? We now have resources in here who can we manage more customers? Can we offer more services? And I think the very best companies and we'll always look at this as a scaling opportunity. It's improve the quality. Can we look after more guests and have the staff comfortable that this is going to be better for them in the long run?
Yeah, it's very interesting. You've been talking. I can almost hear it's like, how do you improve that foundation you have so you actually can grow the business in a more gentle, safe way?
Yeah.
So the scale doesn't become, in principle, the nemesis of the business, which sometimes do when you don't have your foundation in place. It's like those 1% I call always become 1% better today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And to do that, you actually need to, first of all, understand it, but also have people that comes and tells you, it's still not working. We did this change, but it's still not working. What can we do to do the next improvement? Actually, feeling safe enough to come and do that in an organization.
Yeah, so the safety is there. I think, Michael, it's not only that I suppose having that drive to scale the business or survive. Having a need will help drive the improvements. The opposite is true as well. If the resources are there, or there's too many resources, not only do you not need to go looking for the improvements, but you kind of forget how to do it, I'm going to say. So one of the things that I've been very interested in is looking at, well, why is it that Japanese companies have really embraced and been successful with lean and quality in a way that, say, US companies haven't? They say, because the US companies didn't need to. Post-World War II, it was boom times. We could be pretty average of what we were doing and still be successful. Japanese needed to be good. And the same in our organization. If we look at when did we really embrace lean and get good at this, it was 2010 when we were under pressure from the regulators. We had to get good, otherwise we were out of business. But and the Japanese have a word for this, donkan, is sort of a tick-headedness. It's if you always have the resources there and you don't have to think, you forget how to think, you forget how to problem solve. So I think, as we headed into COVID with our business, had we been, maybe, I don't know, private equity backed with loads of money, and, it was all about scaling, and it doesn't matter how much money you spend on marketing because, and then you hit a crisis like that, the organization wouldn't be able to deal with it. It was the fact that we were always under that tension, sometimes because of its external forces, but even internally, just keeping it under tension, that when you hit a crisis, you go, oh, gee, we're used to this. We know how to sit down and solve a problem.
So it's actually creating a culture of that tension, you can call it.
Yeah.
Gentle, constant pressure or tension, but actually keep on focusing on improving and actually creating almost the urgency to do it.
Yes.
They almost look into the future and say, we don't know what's coming, but we have to prepare for it. And we've seen it in the past as well. When we are not prepared, it really, really hurts. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, show me an organization that says, actually, we're fine. We are totally happy with the service we offer our guests. No room for improvement here. It's always there.
Yeah.
But it's the role of leadership to go, yeah, look, let's celebrate the successes and for sure, and look after our staff. But let's also keep that tension and go, look, a net promoter score of 70 is fantastic. Well, could it be 75?
Yeah.
Or 71?
Yeah, and it's actually quite hard, as you said, when you get past the 30s in the service business, I believe, in my experience, to actually improve it. That's where the small things, there's some big moves you make up to getting to plus 10, 20, 30. And then after that, it's really small wins all the time, and keeping those small wins constantly happening in the organization because it's repeating good behavior. Eh? That's what it's about. Giving good behavior and good processes.
But if we're making those improvements and we're locking them into more efficient processes, and if that frees up time, well, then we can begin to look at those and go, what are those niggly little things that we don't seem to be able to close out? And can we put senior management time on that to support the frontline staff? Let's take these things seriously. So there's always room for improvement. There's always things to keep people busy. So we shouldn't be afraid of the efficiency. That isn't going to lead to people standing around with nothing to do. There's plenty to do.
Yeah, and there will be new things.
Yeah.
Or new ventures to go on because you get the time to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting interview. A founder called Ari from Singerman's in the US, and they really bought into the great game of business, which in principle is the lean methodology, I think, below that. And it's about improving the finances. And every time they've done really well in their businesses, then they can then start a new venture. So that's why we're doing it. We can do a new business that can do even more impact in our local community, create jobs and so on. And with that mindset, they've gone from having 4 businesses to about 20 businesses now, all doing different things, but are the best in quality when it comes to coffee, catering, deli, restaurant, whatever it is, bakehouse. They become the best by focusing on that process and actually involve the employees in solving the problems. And that's a really good example to look at how you actually can grow through quality, even in a time where people say it's all about the price or it's all about speed, it's all about technology. No, it's actually all about quality when you deliver service. That's what makes people come back again and again and keep them those 9 and 10 on the net promote score, which is the ambassador, the people that is the super fans and so on.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and they're the one keeping your business alive when the storm hits. Yeah. What is you most excited about right now? You've done this transition of running a business and now advising businesses. What is it like in this process you're very excited about right now?
I've learned so much over the last couple of months. So getting outside of the organization, Topflight Travel Group, fantastic place, brilliant people, as a very successful business, but the same sort of things coming up, again and again. So just getting out and seeing different industries and different companies and talking to different people, the conversations that we've had, Michael, is, I wouldn't have been able to do that 2 months ago when, what are we? It's Thursday. I should be at a senior team meeting. so getting out and just meeting people and talking and realizing what I felt was true is all businesses are the same. Look, these principles that we spoke about here, and obviously we've got a hospitality focus, but we could take this and talk about garden centers or dentists or doctors or engineering plants. It's the same principles. Do you understand what the customer really, really values, and how is the work designed to support that? In fact, is the work designed, or is that left to to people to figure it out? And and if there's a career in that for me of coming in and going, okay, well, look, I can't do it for you, but I can support you and help companies figure out those questions and help design the work better. Let's try and fix the system. I bet you we kind of open to that is, people think it's a people problem. It never is, and even if it is, well, actually, no, genuinely, this is about that guy. Okay, well, that guy was hired through a system, so, there's, and leadership are responsible for the systems. So let's look at, it's super exciting. Get in and, see what we can fix.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting again, because leaders often forget that people that doesn't function in the system, they often say they have bad behavior. They might have bad behavior. Actually, the reason why they have that bad behavior is because they're either in a system that they should never been recruited into, or the system is actually working against you, especially if you have multiple people in your organization being, disengaged or, slacking off the leadership. It's actually nothing personal. It's because they can't do their job. Yeah. And they're frustrated about that. And then the older question comes on, well, I deserve more in pay. They come from a system not working often, I've seen, and that could be they may be not paid as they should, but in principle, that's a system, yeah?
Yeah.
Benefit and compensation is a system. You have to make the right decisions to make sure people don't spend time on thinking about that all the time, because then they're not doing their best work, yeah?
I think so. Now, I think there is a third case. So certainly with the Ski Beat organisation, where you've a lot of seasonal staff coming through, some of them quite young, 18, 19-year-old. So you've got a duty of care to these people as well. Yeah. They're maybe away from home for the first time. So we do look and say, okay, the first thing is the recruitment system right? Are you hiring the right people, with the right traits to do the job? Are the supports there? So the management system, and if that's not right, absolutely, you're going to see variable performance. But the third thing is actually maybe just something happened outside of the business, and and training the staff, the managers and leadership to go, look, has Michael otherwise been great? Oh, he was fantastic up to last week, he was great, but he's just gone off a cliff. Well, maybe something's happened at home, something, and you need to be cognizant of that. This is, and go find out. The guy just maybe needs a bit of space, and a bit of support. So I think that especially with remote staff, and I say remote as in working in resorts away from home, sometimes things can just...
And young people.
We see it in the ski industry. People working in sort of leadership roles in resort will know this. The staff arrive down mid-November. Usually by January, Christmas and New Year is out of the way. Family is looking a bit distant. It's cold. The days are short. People might just get a bit homesick.
Yeah. And you need to give them space for that.
Yeah, you need to appreciate that's not a performance issue. That's maybe just guy needs a hug.
Yeah. What is the one question, Anthony, you wished I asked you? What would it be, and what would you answer?
Well, it's the question that's come up quite a bit over the last couple of months. Surely, Anthony, with all this AI stuff, that's lean is redundant. And so...
Good question, yeah.
Yeah, so the answer is no, thankfully. In fact, what we're seeing at the moment, and look, it's all changing. AI at the moment seems to be very good at empowering individuals.
Yeah.
So it's made my job easier. I'm sure it's made your job easier. But what it's not doing is looking at the system. And if we're not careful at the moment, and I am seeing some evidence of this, it's beginning to reinforce silos. So, I used to have some tension between me and the purchasing department or the finance department or, the kitchen. But now I don't need to talk to those people because I'm more self-sufficient. So the silos are, so that's dangerous. But also AI will happily let you optimize a process that actually nobody should be doing in the first place. We should not be doing this piece of work, but AI will happily let you turn that into a well-optimized AI-driven process.
Yeah.
We got to be careful about that.
Yes, actually creating work that doesn't need to be there.
Exactly.
Really interesting. Really interesting about, I haven't thought about it in that way, like the system, it doesn't think in systems, doesn't think in groups of thinking.
Not at the moment.
No.
So it may be that your sales team are not hitting their sales targets, not because they're not motivated to sell, but because the stock isn't on the shelves.
Yeah.
Or on the website.
Yeah.
AI isn't doing that at the moment. And it may be that the reason the stock isn't on the shelves or the hotel rooms aren't in your inventory is because the accounts payable people haven't paid the bills on time.
Great.
And it may be that hasn't happened because the contractors didn't prepare the contracts correctly. So there's mistakes on the invoices. And that's what I suppose we get into with lean, is looking at the, really down to root cause. So the reason that Michael isn't selling enough hotel breaks is because the procurement people aren't preparing the contracts correctly, which means that the finance people can't pay the bills, which means that the stock isn't coming in.
So it's
magic stuff.
It's magic stuff. Yeah. That was a really good question, Anthony. Thank you so much for coming to Brighton and doing this interview with me and sharing your experiences. I'm sure that lots of people going away from this conversation with a nugget or something they can do on Monday morning, which is really the key of every conversation. Where can people find you and connect with you if they want to learn more or just interesting having a conversation around lean with you?
You'll find Anthony Collins on LinkedIn, so do connect, don't just follow. I have a website, workbetter.studio, and I'm always up for a chat with anybody. No obligation. If you think that this might be something that will help your business, reach out through the website or on LinkedIn and let's have a little Zoom call. And, the worst thing is I learn a little bit about your business and you learn a bit about lean and, or maybe there's an opportunity to work together.
Great. Sending you power and energy, Anthony, for the journey ahead. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Michael.